Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are on the planet. Good day. It's nice to see you. This is Office Hours, and it's Thanksgiving morning in America. So our thanks to you for coming in, and thanks to everybody who's participated in Office Hours over the past few years, because this has been a great thing. We're going to do our regular show today. We're going to do all the standard things that you see. In the second hour, we're going to have a chat about a specific topic that I'll tell you in a moment. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do on officehours.global. So if for some reason you're finding us this Thanksgiving morning, welcome. Our first hour is a general discussion of production and IT-related topics where we answer viewer questions submitted. The second hour, typically a deeper dive into a topic. And today we are talking about industry jargon. The production industry, as many of you have discovered, is rife with all sorts of weird terms. Some of them have specific origins. Some of them, their origins are lost in time, but it's fun. And if you're on a set, you might hear people say weird things that confuse you. We'll have a discussion of that in our second hour, as long as people want to talk about it as we're getting ready for our day. That takes care of the preamble to all of this. The show is actually about answering your questions. So, Mitch, we're going to start into that. Mitch, what do we got?
All right. Thank you, Bill. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. And any question that has any food references in it's going to get a thumbs up from me while I'm reading. First question in from Andy Kokendorfer in Viera, Florida. Thoughts on using bone conducting headsets for Zoom meetings? 10-hour battery life is appealing. Thanks.
And Alex is going to start us off.
Yeah. So I use the I can't remember the name of it right now. The Shocks Open Comms. So it has a boom. The big advantage of it is not so much the bone conducting, which is fine. Sometimes you can actually hear the bone conducting through an open mic. So, but if you're using it with the boom, the big advantage is the boom's off-axis rejection is really good. So if you're doing other things while you're in that Zoom meeting, or you're shuffling around, or cleaning your pool, you can do all those things without people hearing you doing that. Making that work, even washing the dishes, making coffee isn't that bad. So all those things can work out relatively effectively with that. But it's really the boom part is the part that really made the biggest difference with the Shocks Open Comms. So I'd recommend looking at those for your mobile based ones. Of course, the quality isn't going to be as high as a real mic if you're doing something that matters.
And don't worry, I'm sure Alex has never cleaned his pool while he's been on a conference call with you.
Not when I've been on a call with you, Bill. Bill, every time we have a call, of course, I am sitting just at a seat, just staring, at a sheet of paper where I'm taking copious notes.
That's right. Yeah, there you go. Next one, Mitch Hill.
It's I did get the same ones that Alex had, and they just felt funky on my head. They were just kind of weird. And the worst part was it tickled me. It made me laugh. So I started giggling in the middle of a conversation.
If it's tickling,
it would make me giggle in the middle.
Why are my questions making Mitch so happy?
Yeah, no, it was if it's tickling you, it's turned up too high. That's the problem.
So I just kept turning it up higher, hoping it would go away, and it just made me giggle even more.
That's going to make it even worse.
Bone conduction plus a subwoofer. That'd be fun. A carnival ride.
The big reason I got them, and still the reason I use them, is because they're exceptional at being able to listen to a show and listen to comms at the same time. So I can be on comms, throw them on with Unity or Agent IC, and still have all of that, and still have the show in my ear. It's really useful.
That's very pragmatic and useful. Let's go on to the next question.
Mike Edwards from Brooklyn, New York, where there's a great parade going on right now. Morning, guys. Would connecting a Stream Deck pedal and a Stream Deck XL to a Raspberry Pi be a good idea, or would you guys recommend a different configuration setup to use both of them at the same time with Companion? Thanks.
Alex.
Yeah, there shouldn't be any reason that you couldn't do it that way. If one Stream Deck works, the other one, they're both going to work. And so if there's a reason that you have them both plugged in, the Stream Deck software itself will manage that. It's just a matter of, I haven't seen a Stream Deck connected to a Raspberry Pi. I think that it can be done, but if it can be done, the amount of information being passed from the Stream Decks to the host computer is trivial. So it shouldn't be a problem at all.
And, Mike, if you can imagine it, try it and then report back. Tell us how it works. That's really cool. John wanted to get in on this. John?
Well, it's funny because Jonas and one of our longtime producers are connecting up a regular Stream Deck to a Raspberry Pi right now. There's some hoops you have to jump through, but I'll keep you posted on the progress.
And that's exactly how people learn how to do things. I mean, if you don't experiment and try things that are a little unusual, you never find out whether they work or don't. And if you find out they work, everybody benefits. Let's go on to the next question.
From Al Trivet in Carmichael, California. Al says, anyone have any experience with this 3D space mouse?
Wow, sounds like a great description, a 3D space mouse. Alex, you have
some? Yeah, the intention of it is to give you kind of be able to, in a 3D application, go forward and back as well as back and forth. I did test this years ago, and it was really cool. I was like, this is the future. This is awesome. And then I never used it again. So, I mean, I used it for like a week, and I kept on trying to put it into my workflow, and I just couldn't. I don't know anybody that I know that actually, there's a lot of us that have bought them. I just don't know anyone that actually uses it in production. It does seem like it is. It does do what it says it's going to do. And what you basically can do, it just gives you the Z-axis or the Y-axis, depending on who you talk to. So architecture versus animation. Z in architecture, Z is away. I think that's how, or Z is up, and then. Anyway, and then with Z is away in animation. So anyway, so the point is, you get that Z axis back. You can grow and grab things that are off there, because sometimes when you're dealing with 3D, you have to kind of rotate around to figure out how you're going to select something. And so it gives you those tools to do that, but it's not supported in all the apps. It's not. And again, it's something that sat on my desk for months until I sent it back.
Do you think as virtual goggles become more prevalent, people will need to, like, I want to see this on the shelf and it's out there and to the right? Will it become more useful?
20, I think it's almost 25 years ago, I visited a company that doesn't exist anymore called Silicon Graphics. And I was working for Lucasfilm at the time. And so the great thing about working at the ranch is that you could trade lunches all the time. You say, hey, you want to come for lunch? And then I'll come down and see you. And so the only people that wouldn't do that are Lockheed for some reason. So anyway, we try to get their Skunkworks team to trade visits. Anyway, it didn't work. So anyway, so the for SGI, I went down there and we went into this room, and you put this huge goggles, it was almost a helmet on, and you had these gloves, and you could grab onto something, and you'd feel it, and you could pull it apart and everything else. And I was like, this is the future. They said, well, it's less than 10 years away, and that was 25 years ago, and we still don't have it. It was, but it was like I don't know how many millions of dollars were in that room to make that run. And it was, the visuals were pretty simple, but it was unbelievable. And so I think that, there's definitely a future there that we're going to get to, and you can see everybody working on it. But it's still a little ways out.
Well, I think from the point everybody saw Tom Cruise in Minority Report reach up and throw things around on screens and things like that, we've had this vision of what
that stuff's easy. Like that stuff is that we're doing. Gesture based stuff is not that far away. It's that we do that now. Like your new MetaQuest will do gesture control, and your there's things that Apple has that are gesture control, and so on and so forth. So those things are well known. It is the gloves, being able to grab onto something, being able to feel it when you grab onto it, that have existed in the past, but at incredible prices. So
interesting, fascinating topic. Let's move on to the next question.
From Andy Kokendorfer in Viera, Florida, and caps are stuck. Has anyone had a chance to use the Sony FR7 yet? Thoughts?
Mitch, go ahead, and then Alex will finish this up. Mitch?
Yeah, it's funny. I talked to my rental buddy to see what kind of activity there is on it, because often talked about, seldom seen, but the requests are starting to flow in, especially for roundtables and things like that, where people are being interviewed or they're having a hybrid event. I think the FR7s would be great in and around the interviewees, and they can use the FX9 or FX6 or whatever else they were using in the back of the room to catch the wide shot. So it's going to be very interesting to see if they actually deliver on what we think is a great camera.
Alex?
Yeah, I think that the FR7 is a game changer. I think it ships on Monday, so I think we're still a little ways away. So Monday, I believe, is the ship date, or when some people there are people that I know, I won't call them out, that are in our group that are expecting to get the FR7 next week. So at least one. So a lot of people have ordered them, and they're going to start rolling out next week. So hopefully we'll get some folks on I've asked a couple of them or I've asked one specifically to jump on with the FR7 when they have it. So we'll see what that looks like very, very, very soon. We're hoping to use it in production as early as the week following. so we're pretty excited about it. It's the same sensor as the FX6. So if you've seen footage from an FX6, that's what it's going to look like. The big thing to know is what does the interface do and how smooth is the interface. But that's really the only change that we're really looking at, being able to do, how good is it? And from their very rough webinar that they did, the interface to the iPad, it looks like it's just a web page that you open up. So it can be an iPad, it can be a computer or whatever. And it looks like it's going to work really well. It looks like a very good setup. I don't think it's going to be a camera that we use a lot at a big event. I think we think of PTZ cameras that way, but I think that you're going to find it more useful in a studio environment. So less than 15 feet away. Full frame sensor is a thing. So it's not something that you really with Super 35 we won't go over 75 feet. With a full frame sensor we typically won't go over 25 to 30 feet. It's just after that the depth of field becomes a real challenge, so it's really designed for more up and close. I think it's going to be, Sony is showing it as a filmmaker's tool. And I don't know if that's actually, it might work that way. But I think that it's going to be explosive when it comes to a YouTuber, live vlog, vlogger, like the high end solution for this. I think it's going to be massive. And I think they're going to sell as many as they can make. Because I think it's at the price point that it's at $10,000 for a lot of people that are kind of in that upper end of doing stuff from their studio. I think it's going to be an incredible camera, at going forward. So we're really excited to see it.
Mitch, you had another thought?
Yeah, on their website, if you look at it, they're pushing the film aspects of it, but as a for car cameras and jib arms, and so they can move the camera around, stuff like that.
The hard part is that the jib operators have a very specific way of working, and I think that it's going to be hard to get them to I had one jib operator that explained it like you have to learn how to chase a chicken. If you can chase a chicken, you can. It's like if you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge it. If you can chase a chicken with a and go around, and really follow it. But that requires this muscle memory of where the camera is going to go and what the controls are and everything else. And I don't think this is going to provide that, to be honest. I mean, I think that I think that the DJI solutions are closer to the real thing. And especially if you look at their virtual gear solution that is, got basically what feels like a gear head, but then it's just wired. That's going to be much closer to what a filmmaker would want to do. So I don't think that I don't know if Sony knows what they're sitting on. So I think they're promoting it into one area. Now they may know it, and what they want to do is be aspirational. Sometimes you want to go for the film market and show how it could be used for film, so that you don't want to enter and people feel like it's just for people making YouTube videos. So that might be why they're doing it. But it on the surface, we won't know until we get it. But if it works as well as we think it will, for roundtable discussions, for premieres, for again YouTubers, this is going to be just an incredible solution. So it'll be really interesting to see.
Something to keep our eyes on. Next question.
From Craig McFarlane in Boston, Massachusetts. Craig asks, what is the best way to pull the Insta360 link video to my ATEM? Okay. I was hoping the app could go full screen, but I can't hide the right panel.
Alex?
Depends on what computer you're using. The app will not work. You need something that's going to play it out of the HDMI at full screen. So you may be able to use. We've had people use Raspberry Pis in the past to be a pass through, where they have a USB camera and they put it out full screen. It's never really worked great, but and I don't know if the Raspberry Pi will support the software itself, because you do want that software to do the settings. I think that the best way to do it would most likely be to have something like a computer. I would probably use a Mac Mini, but that seems like a really expensive solution. but a PC would probably work with 2 HDMI outputs. And you have, so if you have a little B-Link or something like that, what you need is one screen that runs the controller and the other screen that goes into the ATEM. And then you set that other screen up as a full screen with whatever app you're using, this full screen display, and then have it pass into the ATEM. And then you can control it on one screen and have the output of it But you need some app like OBS. I mean, I would use an old Mac Mini with QuickTime, set QuickTime to full screen, push it out, have a controller on the other one. But you could also probably do that with a much less expensive small PC. And you just have to have 2 HDMI outs from that PC and 1 USB in. And a lot of those B-Links and other things like it have that.
All right, next question.
Andy Kokendorfer is back again from Vieira, Florida. For headphones, do you have a digital analog converter, recommendation that won't break the bank? Thanks.
Guy Cochran's going to start us off. Guy?
Yeah, the one I like is from AudioQuest. It's the red Dragonfly. It looks like this, little USB to 3.5 millimeter. It's about $200. They have some bigger ones that are more expensive. If you're using it with a phone, you're going to need a little tail cable that'll convert the Lightning to USB. I just use the Apple camera converter one that has I think it has an SD card thing on it, but it got big. And so they're looking at the website now, they do make a smaller tail cable because if you're listening with your phone and this thing's in your pocket, it's an ordeal. So right now, I currently ditched that whole solution because with the Bauer and Wilkins headphones, I had like $1,000 going on there, and it was cool. But now listening to the Apple headphones for $500, it was half the cost. So I sold off all that stuff and just used the Apple headphones.
Oops, Mitchell.
Yeah, that's a cool device, Guy. But on the other side of the equation, and I know I'm not answering the question, but I have broken many banks. There's a company called Benchmark that makes a great high voltage headphone amp for digital audio listening conversion. And behind me, I have an RME 82 Black Edition, and they both work great. But unfortunately, they did break the bank.
Yeah, high-end audio gear that's really, really for that niche of the market at the top end tends to be extremely expensive. Really good stuff, but extremely expensive. Let's move on to the next question.
From Guy Cochran in Seattle, USA, and we're right here celebrating Thanksgiving on the panel. What would the process be to test a cheap UVC capture device as a good one?
Versus a good one, is it? Yeah.
Sorry.
So cheap versus good in USB UVC capture devices. I have no idea. This is beyond me. Guy, do you have a thought? It was your question.
Yeah, I was researching Mitch's other question that's upcoming with this $30 Condor Blue, and Alex has talked about this a couple of times of lining them up. And I can help. I need to know what the process is to get these. I looked at getting one of those. What is it? The matrix that'll give you a 4x4. So you can take one USB or one HDMI in and spit it out to 4. So then we can get the same source. And then, so like right now, I brought in, Alex Knight had recommended that Roland that was uncompressed. So this is a Roland UVC02 piping in a chart. And then here's a Blackmagic. I don't know if I'm seeing any difference here. So this is, yeah, I'll have to make this stuff full screen. So Roland, this is $300. This is the Blackmagic, and then
you can see the resolution improves on the Blackmagic a little bit. If you look at there, that's the Blackmagic right there.
There's a delta. Yeah. There's a little difference there.
Look at that. If you go back, lost it.
So that's the Roland.
Let's see here.
Can we pin Guy's screen somehow?
Let me pin it.
Because when any of us are talking,
and this process might be a little flawed, so don't take this.
So completely. Look at the array. So if you look at the trumpeter on the trumpet on the bottom as well. Yeah. Well, on the side, look at the side one. So see how they don't converge until you get down to that 800 to 900, or really at 875 or so. Now go back to the Roland.
This is the Blackmagic that we're currently on, and now I'm going to the Roland. Here's the Roland.
Do you see those converges in the array between 600 or at about 700, 725 or so? So that's a lower resolution.
I saw that specifically on the bottom one, right above 700. There's a clear diamond that's showing up.
So that's so there's definitely a resolution change between the two that are there. But what we really want, that's something we want to look at. So you can see how that, and that could be, I think the Roland, and is that the same camera?
So that's the thing, is this is a flawed test because I don't have a matrix to put them side by side. So it could be the way that I'm piping it in. But I just wanted to bring up something in the ballpark. So don't take this completely as gospel, but I just wanted to give you guys kind of an idea because.
And what are the two different cameras?
So that's the thing. This isn't a camera. This is Sienna. So let me pull. So here I can bump through these different charts. So
okay, now switch between these two. This is more interesting.
Okay, so this is the Blackmagic, but the workflow. I'll have to explain how this is piping through to get into the Blackmagic. This is going through. How is this piping in? I think this is the Apple TV doing NDI conversion. So it's kind of it's
they're not getting the same route. Signal.
Yeah, they're not getting the same signal. So here's the Roland now. But again, the paths are different. So I don't want to make this gospel. But
this isn't the test. This is just an example. Go ahead and go to the Roland.
This is the Roland here. And then I'm going to switch over now to the Blackmagic design.
Because that's what's interesting is that, so looking at, if you look at the red above and go back to the Roland, you'll see the color changing.
Roland.
And you'll see it in the pink. Roland. You'll see it in the green. So go ahead and go back to the Blackmagic.
This is Blackmagic.
So that's what, so the kind of things we're looking for are the colors that go around the edge and what are they how are they changing? And it's not, and I don't, have to figure out exactly how we're going to measure that, but you can see it. This is the Blackmagic right now.
This is the Blackmagic.
And go to Roland.
This is Roland.
And go back again to Blackmagic.
This is
so you can see subtle changes in the grayscale down at the bottom. You can see some color changes in the top.
Well, then here's the one that you'll probably appreciate. This is all right. So Blackmagic, and now cutting over to Roland. And 3, 2, 1, Roland.
The Roland, the Roland definitely has a different tint to it as well. Go back to the Blackmagic.
Blackmagic.
Yeah. So I think that we have to figure out how we're going to do this. And I think we'll keep on coming back to it. But I think that we need to do that across a lot of things. And we do have to figure out probably how to use a matrix to make that work. My matrix is so tied into my production pipeline. I'd be a little, be hard for me to tear it apart, but I possibly could. But what we need is an input going into the black, like a whole bunch of inputs going into something that are all the same or different. I mean, like for instance, one of the things we're looking at is like this. I have the little Condor Blue that I think this little guy here, and I haven't been able to test it yet. I keep on going. Oh, where am I going to plug this in anyway? So, with all of the thing that I'm really interested in is taking the same camera and feeding it into a bunch of these and then seeing what that camera does. What does each one of these do in the digitization? Do they, and things you want to also look at as pure blues, pure reds, pure greens, and see if you start to see stair stepping from scaling, see if you start to see, obviously shifts in the black levels, all those things are things we want to look at. So I think we have to keep on working on defining
one more quick one here. So Roland with this, this is a 4K UHD. And again, this is a flawed test just to make everybody well aware, but this is the Blackmagic. But look at those white shifting, the first A. I can't read what it says, but it's the first round ball. So Blackmagic and now cutting over to Roland.
Whoa, that
something is, something's
is that really the same image? I don't know if that's the same image. That can't be the same image. Can't change that.
What is going on? Yeah. Something should be the same feed.
Well, the other thing is whenever you're doing a resolution test, we're all watching this and we're all watching it on whatever we have in our suites that we're watching it on.
We're not looking at the quality. We're not measuring each one. We're just simply looking at the difference between the two.
Right. But if to the extent that my small teleprompter monitor that I was looking at that example on may not be resolving at the same level of somebody else's system, you never can tell if it's something in the signal that's actually differing or the way
if they're switching between it. The main thing is you're looking for delta, not absolute. So in any monitor, I mean, your little teleprompter may not work, but if any regular
the delta
monitor,
on my teleprompter may be exacerbating or eliminating the ability to see that difference. It's a real difference.
But generally, when you see the black ones turn white,
something's really weird on this one. So again, this Roland, and then switching over to Blackmagic, and the white changes to black. Something's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they are one's going through a Bird Dog Play and one's going through an Apple TV. So that's another variable. So it's because I wanted to, I need that matrix. I need, if that's the test, if I need to buy that $200 thing, I need to ask Santa. Where's Santa Greg? Papa needs a new 4x4 matrix or an 8x. Do you have the 8x, Alex?
I have the 8x, yeah. I have the 8x 4K, so it's still expensive. I realized the one that was cheaper was the HD version, but you could do the HD version, it'd be fine. But mine's the Blackmagic 4K or Blackbird 4K, which is really nice once you get around to opening the web page for it. Like once you address it, it's pretty powerful because you can copy the UDIDs, you can, and then you can do all the routing there. It's much easier than using the front panel. I used to go, it has to be somewhere on the desk because I have to be able to reach up and make the changes. I'm not touching the interface anymore.
And then the other thing on these tests is Craig mentions in the chat is what's the load getting put on the computer and what's the latency. So, I mean, we've got like lots of variables, but it'd be good to test. Yeah. I mean, the $20 version of a cheap Chinese knockoff versus an AJU tap, which is the gold standard, why am I going to spend $300 versus 20? What's the scoop?
Yep, absolutely.
Mitch, did you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, well, that's a tough one to weigh in on, but the color charts are very telling. I usually just try to get past the first goal there, which is, can it make the frame rate and the resolution that it says? Can it do 1080 and then is it 30 or 60?
But some of these cheap ones have really, people are like, I have this little digitizer, and it really can make a difference. Like I've seen $50 like HDMI interfaces, and the blacks are crushed. Not like a little, but like a lot. And so the quality of those H.264 chips is wildly different. And so thinking that something you can buy a $50 one, and what would be interesting is if you can buy a $50 one, it looks exactly like a $300 one, then that's something we need to know too. But a lot of them, I would say 80% of them are not good.
I fired up my the USB output on my FX3 Sony to go directly into Zoom, and it can't do anything more than 520. And I didn't know that. I went to all this trouble, and I said, 520, that's useless.
Yes. And for those of you watching and listening, that's one of the reasons that people who do this for a living are so persnickety about test equipment and monitors and things, making sure that when they're looking at two different signals and comparing them, there's nothing getting in the way of an accurate comparison.
And the other thing we're going to want to do is whatever computer is getting we'll want to have like Omniscope open, so that we can go back and forth, because it's one thing for us to say, the reds are a little different, but in a scope, we can really see you'll see it jumping up and down to see what the difference is, and you'll see exactly what it's doing to different colors. So that's it's a good start to our journey.
And I think a fun discussion.
I do think that you need a 8x8 Blackbird. I'm just saying.
Need that, and I think Omniscope is going to go on Black Friday sale. Does anybody know?
It's 30% off.
Is it 30%? All right. Papa needs a lot of new stuff, man.
Yeah, that's right.
Remember that the Omniscope is. We're going to try to get him on. The Omniscope is 3 computers too. Like it's 3 licenses when you buy it. So it's just so you don't. It's not just one per machine, because we put it on a lot of machines. So.
And then be aware of the different versions. The Pro version will give you NDI output, which the one I got last year on sale does not. So it's kind of a drag. But yeah, the 3 license thing is cool because I have it on my Mac, but I also have it on a PC up in the cloud. So it's cool to have it on multiples. Whereas something like was it QLab? There was a couple I got burned on where I thought that it was multiple licenses, but it's like, nope, you get one machine, you want more. I think it was MIDI or one of those. Right. I think MIDI's on sale today too.
Ouch. All right, we've been on this for a while. Let's move on, see what the next question is.
Peter Belbin from Houston, Texas asks, Rode has released the NT USB Plus side address mic with a USB-C connector. Seems good for voice based on online reviews I've seen at $180. Perhaps this might be one to test. Comes with a headset connection and some built-in DSP filter functions.
Well, Rode has done well over the course of the last few years. They've come from something I hadn't heard about in a pantheon of mic companies, and they've done well since then. Alex, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it looks like a good. It definitely looks like a good looking mic. For what's going on there. This is the kind of one that I may stretch out and buy it to sample with the other ones, because I've definitely used a lot of Rode mics. I do like the big pop filter. I think that is. I think the pop filter is it's a good thing when you're sending it out. I really like the one thing that I couldn't see on the website, and I'm just trying to see if it also has, if it's only USB. Yeah, it's only USB as far as the connection goes. And so that's good. I have to admit that one of the reasons that we like the MV7 for when we're investing in them is that I can have a USB connection, and then I can also plug in an XLR if I want to. So if I want to put it into a larger system, I want to grow that into a bigger system, it can be part of that system. And so you save a little bit of money, obviously, by not doing that from a production perspective. But it's a little bit, usually I've learned to not buy a lot of those because I can't fit them into a larger system. It may not matter, but it's definitely something that I'm interested in. The other thing I look at everything through a lens of what am I going to send to remote participants. A larger diaphragm, which is what this looks like, is great for a home that I have control over. The advantage of something like, again, an MV7 is that it has a lot of off-axis rejection. So what I wanted to do is only listen to that person and not listen to the rest of the room because I don't have any control over that. So again, I'm looking at it through a very specific lens of what am I going to send to people. I think as a general purpose for a vlogger or someone who is putting something up on YouTube or doing that kind of thing, this could work, or even our show, this could work really well. So we should definitely, hopefully someone will get it. I'm not sure if I'm ready to buy any more mics. I got a lot of them laying around. I'm nearly at Wallace level. So.
Oh, that's dangerous to get up there. Let's go on to the next question.
And it's a question for me here in Wilmington, Delaware. Has anyone tested the Condor Blue HDMI to USB-C encoder? It has a blue cable.
Mitch, you asked the question. Did you want to answer it as well?
I better start because I brought this up last night on After Hours, and here it is, still packaged, has not been opened. And I got a lot of grief from the gang on After Hours saying, why don't you test it yourself? And I said, why should I test it when somebody else is willing to test it or already has tested it? And I said, it has a blue cable.
But you're concerned with returnability?
And I guess whether it does what it says it does. And by the way, to give you an idea of the range of criticisms I got last night, my question was voted down to -11 at one point. It's made it back up to 3, so that's something.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty interested in it. I still have it here. It's been one of those things that it happened to arrive when I was rebuilding my whole studio. So adding one more thing has been just looking like adding one more thing. But I do want to throw it into the pipeline. What I love about the idea of it is, even if it's not perfect, having something in my bag that just says I can get a video signal into my computer, like just a tiny little, like I've carried around mini recorders forever. So it's just a matter of knowing that I have something that just plugs into my computer and provides a signal.
Alex, what would you use to record it and or manipulate it? Would you run it into Final Cut or something like that? Oh,
no, it would just be like, if I always have a setup with my when I used to do a lot of streaming remotely and I'd go to locations, I always had something in my bag that said, in worst case scenario, I can open up, it depended on the year, but it was something between Wirecast or FFM or some kind of FFmpeg or Mimo Live or whatever. I know that I can open up a computer, I can get the video signal from my system, and I can stream it out to the internet. Like all I wanted it to do was just know that if my encoders go down, and I never had to use it, knock on wood, but I never had to replace my encoders with it, but I knew that I had to be able to do that. And sometimes we would, as the encoders were coming up, we'd throw that laptop in and just play out, just run the stream to a page so that we could see it. But that's like when you think about a PACE approach, primary, alternate, contingency, emergency, that's like the emergency one. Like that is on the 4 ways out of this building, there's one of them that is, I've got a MiFi and I've got a laptop and I'm going to stream it over, whatever LTE, and some signal's going to go out to the rest of the world. And of course, if I get to that point, many, many things went wrong.
So the USB-C out of the laptop into, that would convert it to HDMI where you could feed it into.
No. This is HDMI in.
Oh, HDMI in. So this would be like taking the ATEM's out signal in and then USB-C.
It's an encoder, Bill.
It's an encoder.
So theoretically, this is an encoder inside of what looks like a cable. And so that's what we want to test. But that's what I would use it for. And again, as you try to make a kit smaller and smaller and smaller, there is a place where I might want to take my 6K camera, and I just want to plug it into my laptop and have it and be able to jump on a show or do an interview. And having something super small like this that doesn't require external power, that's just in my bag is interesting.
That makes sense. Mitch, you had another thought?
I'm with Alex on that. I got it as an emergency stopgap so that if my ATEM goes down or something else happens, that I always have the ability to get USB into my Zoom call, because I found out, again, my FX3 only on the USB connection only does 520, and this does 1080, folks, and it's got a blue cable.
Blue cable's pretty. I will say that.
I think it makes the bits go faster.
Is the blue cable
red slows the signal down by about 2%. Yeah, and redshift, it's the redshift slowdown of the bits.
A little more anti-magnetic, the blue ones, exactly. I would think. Yeah.
The blue is it's like ice. It's slippier.
And there you go. The electrons just bounce off.
The blue cable makes it slippier. Yeah, there you go.
Next question.
From Vic Hernandez in Springfield, Missouri. What soft skills do you credit office hours for instilling or enhancing?
Boy, this is a big question. Let's start with Alex and go to Guy and John. Go ahead, Alex.
I think that it just working with a lot of people. I mean, I've done it in the past, but I think that over the last 3 years, I just learned more and more about just working with teams and working because it's such an amazing group of people to work with that you're constantly like, how do I provide more support for them, for everyone here to do stuff as opposed to me doing it, because I know that if I'm doing something, then I'm just hanging on to it for no reason because we have so much skill here. So being able to, learn how to delegate even more effectively and learning how to work with people and work with people that don't necessarily agree with you, that are smart and they're good at what they do, and you just don't see eye to eye, and figuring out the best ways to find a way that we find someplace in the middle or on their side or my side, and being able to be kind of, open to all of those options.
Guy?
Yeah, I'd say being more present. A lot of the time you're in these sessions and you're looking at other things and you forget what the conversation is. So you got to just really listen and pay attention, because it can shift all of a sudden. And if you're not listening, if you're not present, if you're not paying attention, then all of a sudden when you go to reply, you're off base. So it's truly listening, and it's an art. It's a skill. You hear it at NPR. People that are really good, they're not just plowing through and not listening, because again, there's sometimes a nugget that somebody says, and all of a sudden you can latch onto that nugget and it drives a deeper conversation. So I'd say definitely just the listening and presence is what I've learned.
John Preto.
Inside of the office hours database that I maintain, every day I write something down. Like today, I added the Condor adapter. So every day I've got a list of hundreds of items that I've learned on office hours. But my favorite thing is when Roscoe taught us crossing the line, and when it's appropriate and when it is appropriate and when it's not appropriate. That I learned from Roscoe.
Mitch Hill.
Yeah, I'll take that a little step further. I'm a former radio guy. I did a morning show on the radio. So you can imagine the abuse my internal filter took. I got a serious upgrade on my filter when I came on board here in office hours a little over a year ago. And I would say that was probably the best thing to help me dealing with other people, because here's the thing. Nobody on this panel will tolerate anybody that either says something that they know is incorrect or is inappropriate. So I'm just saying I got a great upgrade for free.
To me, it's a process of, you call them soft skills, and they are really, that's often human relationship skills and how important they are. Everybody I know that I've learned the most from has managed, the one thing that there is universal about them is they manage to stay and improve in their business over the course of many, 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 many years. And when you start finding the people who are not competent at those soft skills, they tend to fall away. They tend to not be asked back onto sets. They tend to just mess things up in some way because they don't know how to manage that interhuman interaction part of things. And because of that, you start saying, oh, wait, maybe even though they're called soft skills, maybe they're every bit as important as the hard skills. Because you think when you're young, at least I did, oh, that guy's really brilliant at this thing, so it doesn't matter if he's a jerk because he's really, really fabulous. And there are still circumstances where, yeah, that can be true. But boy, there is so much more competition. There's not as much difficulty in finding people who can do technical stuff now, because this has been a part of the general internet discussion for a long time. So why not pay attention to both sides of that? Why not be technically competent and somebody who can work with a team and fit in and knows when not to talk and when to thank people for helping you get your jobs done? Because you will ascend a couple of steps on the call list, and that will get you more experience and more success in your industry. So I just think it's incredibly important. And I also give credit to my wife for being really, really good at that and for teaching me all the way along the way how important it is to do those little thank yous and the rest of those things that I could ignore when I was a young man. And she made me understand every bit as important as knowing which end of an XLR to use. Let's move on to the next question.
From James Fosleen in Minneapolis, Minnesota. James asks, I'm thinking of some Black Friday software deals on audio. Is there any we shouldn't miss?
Mitch has a thought here.
It's a pretty quick answer. IZotope and Waves. Those are my two favorites, and they'll be below the normal price.
Alex.
Yeah, what Mitch said. I was going to say exactly the same thing. So I'm just going to step away now.
Okay. Well, we've got a confluence of opinion here.
Waves, IZotope goes, the biggest sales are usually Black Friday. Waves is about every 3 to 6 months. You get like this, hey, everything's $30, and no one buys anything in between. You just wait for the things to come down. The only time you buy something from Waves when they're not on sale is when you're desperate. so anyway, but this is the time. This is the right time to buy those, and the sales get better as you buy more. They've got that part down pat.
James. Oh, next question.
From James Babbitt in San Diego, California. James asks, thanks for the excellent new song by the Remotes. How did Alex help with recording the drums?
And Alex will weigh in on this.
I showed him everything. I showed him exactly how to syncopate and how to do all the things and how to hit the thing with the thing. And that was really, I really felt very talented about that. It was mostly this. I just sat there and gave him all the tips he needed with my fingers on this desk and just tapping it along. I just bankrolled it.
For those of you who help,
I just helped rent the theater, and that was the only help I did, was just trying to make. I just thought it was such a incredible opportunity to have these drums playing in this giant theater. So I was enrolled and thought, well, let me make sure that happens, and so that's all I did.
For somebody who has been peripherally involved on the video side of all the Office Hours productions since the beginning one, it is just an extraordinary group of people. I would have said musicians. Yes, they are extraordinary musicians, but I find that secondary to the fact that they're just lovely people to hang out with. And it's been one of the joys of my life.
And it was also an incredible detail. I mean, incredible deal. Not incredible deal, but an incredible deal. Like, so part of it was that it wasn't a ton of money. I just didn't want someone else to spend money on it. And so, but it wasn't, that was part of the deal, is like, it was this grand theater and it wasn't very expensive. And it was just an opportunity I didn't think we could walk away from. I thought I had written it off a long time ago. Like, oh, they're never going to finish that song.
Well, you picked something that was so complicated. I mean,
what's funny was I didn't think it was that complicated until yesterday when I watched it go through. When I watched the tracks, I was like, oh, I really put
people take this in the band. For those of you who don't know about the band may be quietly, subtly working in the background, but the complexity that they managed to achieve and the dedication and the attention to detail is stunning. And boy, you can learn a billion lessons about how really good music gets created and recorded just by hanging out with the Office Hours band. They're amazing.
Very complex. And I'm really glad that it came out. I can't wait to see the video with the drums in the theater. It's gonna be amazing.
Still working on things, so it'll be a while, and more songs to come. Great group of people. Let's move on to the next question.
Peter Belbin from Houston, Texas, asked, BM Blackmagic Design HD Constellation 4ME switchers are now available for those unable to justify an 8K. For a show like Office Hours, would that be a lower cost way to simultaneously provide an alternative form factor view of the Office Hours show, for example, mobile devices?
I don't know that much about the back end. Alex, good. You just weighed in, so tell us a little more about it.
Yeah, so this is just it basically there is an HD version of the Constellation that I think looks almost identical to the 8K version. What I wish is it was a 4K version, not an HD version. So because we would definitely jump on a 4K version really quickly. The 8K is superfluous to us, and so I kind of wish that they had shifted down to 4K rather than HD. And so I don't think that we're going to jump into it because again, we're hoping to do a version of this that is at 4K. And as far as cropping or going to another form factor, I mean, we could potentially do that, but a lot of that can be done in the encoder. But I still need that 4K start because if I want to do 9:16, let's just say, I need more vertical than the 1080. So that's the challenge there. So that would, we could theoretically also figure out a way to do it everything sideways and then rotate it up. There's a bunch of different options there, but I wish that they had gone to 4K. The HD one for me, I can definitely see how a lot of people would use it and be valuable. But 4K was really the floor that I started in 2016, and I have these extremes, but I don't use the extremes that much in production.
All right, next question.
From Alan Scott in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. I'd like to set up audio meters for Zoom meetings. Budget is always a problem. So what is my lowest cost option?
Mitch has some thoughts. Mitch, take it away.
There are some, I think CBS Labs has a freebie out there that has special deflection on the RMS VU meters. But I still think you should wait for the next big sale from Waves and get the very same one we use here. The WLM meters you see there from Hasmukh are excellent meters, and it's the ones that we approve and use every day.
Alex?
Yeah, Ulean has some that you might be able to use as well, and those are good. I think those are cross-platform. On the Mac, if you really want to go crazy, there's another one called Sonic Atom, so Sonic Atom has a lot of things that you can put together there. So that's another one. My favorite one is still Spectre. And Spectre was bought by Synaptic, and I think that they just found that the code was probably more complicated than they expected. So if you bought it in the past, you can send them a receipt, and they'll, like your email receipt from 10 years ago, and they'll give it to you, but they haven't really released it any wider than that.
All right, moving on to the next question.
From Nathan Cashian from Oregon City. I just got a new Stream Deck Mark II, but I'm out of ports. The user guide says it must be connected directly, not through a hub. I've got 4 HDs via hub, HDMI to USB, an audio interface, and a hub for peripherals. How do you connect so many devices?
There's never enough ports as you get into this business. I don't care how many you have. I liken it a little bit before I ask other people I built a studio out of a hay barn, and I put on 124 Edison power outlets arrayed behind where my desk was going to go, thinking that I would never use those up. Sure enough, 4 months after I moved into that, every single one of them had something attached to it. It's never enough ports. Let's start with Mitchell.
Yeah, you didn't say if you had an M1 or a Studio or an Ultra. I do it by breaking the rules. I have a OWC Thunderbolt dock, and I use that to connect my Stream Deck. And we're not supposed to do that, but I do it, and it works for the most part.
Alex?
Yeah, I think that the reason that they do that is because a lot of people are going to put in cheap hubs, and then it's not going to be able to handle the throughput, and then people are going to complain that it's not working. I definitely think that if you're going to an OWC hub, as Mitch had mentioned, you're probably going to be fine. Like you're going to, or put other things on those hubs and really try to prioritize it. But especially as you start adding multiple Stream Decks, I don't know anybody that has 3 or 4 Stream Decks running that isn't running that through a hub, but they are typically OWC. What I would say is OWC quality, hubs that are there. That if you're buying a hub for less than probably $150 or $200, you're probably not going to get. You probably don't want to do that. So you really do want to get a high quality hub to move things through.
Yeah, I think I've had the same experience. Sometimes they just seem to Y out connectors. There's nothing behind them. But other companies like OWC's one, and there are others, really take care with the engineering to make sure that the signal, the power, everything else is passed port to port completely properly. So one looks like the key.
By the way, they make an OWC hub with an eSATA an eSATA connection as opposed to the Thunderbolt connection. Don't buy that one. It's the one I have. So it's like what am I
wrong
doing with
SKU?
this? Yeah, exactly. So I don't, I'm sure that it was great when people used eSATA for their drives.
I don't think I've ever had an eSATA drive in my entire history. I had a cable. It
was one of those things like I got it. I was like, there must be something wrong with this. This was years ago, like 2 years ago during COVID. And I was like, I don't understand how this works. And it worked a little bit on the front, and then I finally sat down in my new breakout and I got it all set up. And I was like, where's the Thunderbolt that they're talking about in all the manuals? And I realized the Thunderbolt on mine 2 years ago was eSATA. So just don't buy that one. Just make sure it's got a Thunderbolt on that. When you're looking at it on the left corner, it should be Thunderbolt, not eSATA.
I know for those of you who are friends of ours and we get so specific, no, I need this model number. This is exactly the one.
But it says, the problem is if when you search, if I look at the front and I go Thunderbolt 3 Pro Dock, which is what I bought, and you do that on the OWC site, you will see a Thunderbolt, not an eSATA, because I don't know when they made this or who they made it for, but I bought the wrong one. Not that I'm bitter.
We've all done it. Next question.
Next question from Douglas Carmichael. How can we as a community break out of our echo chamber and strengthen our audience and therefore contributor base?
Alex.
Once we finish 2.5, we'll probably start to expand. So just enjoy it while it lasts. It's going to get better because there's going to be more flow, but it's going to be more challenging as well. So I think that we should enjoy our small village, because it's not that the next one will be better, but it'll come with new things, and there'll be people on after hours complaining about the fact that, I remember when it used to be the blah, blah, blah and everything else. And so just enjoy it while it lasts.
I remember in the early days messing up and thinking, the saving grace is that there's only a couple hundred people here. I didn't mess up horribly in front of the entire planet. And I think there was a certain safety in learning our chops for this. And again, all of us have been kind of, as we've gotten our studios together, as 2.5 rolls up, as we've gotten rid of the black frames inside of our auto cutting system, as we've gotten through like all these things that we've been slowly tying together, or nearly done. And as we get to that, there's a lot of us that have other people that we could bring on and that will expand the number of people viewing it. And we've also tried to make sure that we figure out that back end structure and the culture and all those things very carefully. We've had the advantage of not having to generate, revenue from it. And so a lot of people just get into a rush of like, no one sits and lets something cook for 3 years. That's a very unusual thing to do. And so, most people want to, blow it up. So now, and we're going to still be careful about how we expand, but I'm not too worried about that question. I'm more worried about what happens when another 5,000 or 10,000 people join. That's the thing that I'm concerned about, is how to manage that effectively. And when this does roll out, it's going to look awfully polished, and people will watch it and think, "Oh, that must not be so hard to do." Yeah, exactly. Because everybody who's really good at stuff, you watch them and you go, "Well, that can't be too hard to do," and then you try to do it and you go, "Wait, that's really hard to do." Well, next question.
Eric Price in Kansas City. My son shot some video for a project yesterday using my GH4 and the FHD 100 megabit per second 24p record quality. He did notice that 40% popped up in the viewfinder. Now the video plays in slow-mo. Can I correct it in post? How much speed increase will I need? Oh boy. So this is a process where you have fewer frames and you need to make more frames. And so there's going to be some math and some doubling and things like that involved. So checking all the things is important. Alex, you want to have a weigh in on this? Yeah, you have more frames than you need. I think you need to speed it up by 2.5% or 2.5 times is the number that you're trying to speed it up by. Because it's going to be twice would be 80% plus 0.5. Is that right? 2.5. Yeah. So anyway, because 20 there. So that's what you're going to want to speed it up by. You're going to have problems with the motion blur not looking correct, because now you have motion blur for something that was 2.5 times, in the slow motion. So that may not look quite correct as you do that. And of course, your audio will maybe not sync up. So hopefully you weren't trying to use audio out of that. But it should be recoverable other than the motion blur. And then you can use, if you really need to use it for something, you could potentially do something where you could potentially do a
process where you use something like real motion blur to try to recover those. But you don't. The problem you have is that you need to speed it up, but you don't have quite enough frames to rebuild the motion blur, so it could be a little bit more difficult.
Thank you for catching that. I thought it was undercranked, but it was overcranked. Yeah, that is a much easier thing to solve than you didn't capture enough temporal information. Let's move on to the next question.
Next question in from David Paskin in Miami, Florida. What does ME stand for and mean in Blackmagic Design HD Constellation 4 ME?
It's mix effect, and those are the buses that allow you to do various connections of things in your output. Mitchell and Alex will explain it. Mitch, you want to start?
Yeah, essentially layers. You need certain layers for effects, things like that. The more you got,
Alex,
the better.
You want to expand?
Yeah, I mean, so in any given switcher, these are, as was mentioned before, is buses. These are buses, and it's like putting things on the bus. So if you really think about it here, you have if you have a 4ME, it means you have 4 buses that are going across here, and you can have video going through here, but you can also send this ME to this ME or this ME to this ME. So if you think about this being 4, 3, 2, 1, this is your main output. This is your program output, but you can be using these buses, and each one of these can be, you can have edits as well as not only can you edit those, but you can also add upstream keys. So upstream keys sit in each of these MEs. Now the downstream key isn't, it's its own bus. In fact, it's actually 2 buses that you're not editing, but those downstream keys are applied. And the reason that they are applied over top of everything else is because what you want to be able to do is send out a clean feed of wherever you're going out of here, a clean feed. And then these are, because they're in a separate processing path, what it means is that they can be removed from that. So one output is with them and one output is without them. It can't be integrated to every. And people ask, like, why can't I have a downstream key in my ME4? Because it's designed to be layered back into something. And so, and that also makes the processing much more complicated if you start doing those composites everywhere. So anyway, so those are the MEs. A lot of times we use those multiple MEs to build up a show. So you're not really doing 4 shows. You're using those MEs to build things for the main show. So for instance, you might use, in some cases, you could change the inputs on your super source, but you could have, let's say, two big, a small window and a big window. And then you'd have, that's the program, that's a super source, and that is program, that's your main program, that's ME1. But the shots that are there, maybe ME2 and ME3, so that they're there. Now you're cutting a show. You could cut shows into those windows that are then fed into the ME1 as sources for that process. And so there's a couple, so that's how you start to use these MEs. And sometimes you do you will run a show on ME1 and another show on ME2, for if you're doing like to the web and to the, to the local or to the broadcast or whatever. But most of the way that these MEs are used is to build shots up and have these MEs handing off pieces of what they're doing, or being able to, so that I can continue to edit, and they live in their own little world. I can have lower thirds. I can have all kinds of other things in these other MEs feeding the main program from there.
Nice explanation. We're going to go over a little bit on our regular questions today, because I'm not sure how many people, we don't have any questions on the jargon part of this, and it'll be just kind of relaxed. It's a national holiday, so we're going to take our time.
In the U.S.
In the U.S., that is correct. Exactly. National holiday, not a global holiday.
And everyone on the panel is in the U.S. So
there you go. So we will spend a little time. Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas asks, David Brady wants to know if you can stream a bit of his parade coverage into office hours today.
We discussed that a little bit during the pre-show and the early parts of it. Mitch, what were your thoughts? And Alex, what's yours?
He's live right now in after hours, so you can check him out there if you want to jump over. But I'm sure we could probably catch the tail end. But of course, it's not over until Santa comes out, so I don't know where he is.
Alex, what are your thoughts?
I think it'd be great. If we have an easy way to get him in, let's put him in. I don't even care. I mean, this is Thanksgiving. We'll answer a couple more questions. I don't care if we talk underneath it. Like, we'll just put David's video up and we just keep answering questions. It's Thanksgiving.
I kept watching
So if we can get David in here and we can cut it in, I'm happy for us just to keep answering questions underneath David's video.
There you go.
Have a little fun. Let's go. Yeah.
I kept watching the ISOs down there to see if he showed up, and I'd mention it, but he hasn't come in yet. So I don't know whether the back end crew has an easy way to do a patch across. But if you can, let's see if we can get the parade in. For those of you who might not
live, but if David if he's available and if he comes back in, or if he hears this and decides he wants to play, we'd be happy to, as a little fun thing, is just keep answering questions, and we'll just put the parade up and you can see it. Maybe we'll ask him a couple questions too.
Absolutely. That'd be great. For those of you who don't know, our dear friend David Brady is in New York City. He lives there, and he's right near the start of the parade route. So for years now, he's popped into the show just for a little bit to give us a kind of a highlight of the staging area of the floats and things like that of the parade. So we're hoping to get a little of that. We'll see if we do or not. Let's go on to the next question in the intro.
Next question in from David Paskin in Miami, Florida. Thanks to office hours, I can no longer join a Zoom meeting without my good camera, mic, and lights. Do you ever join a Zoom anymore without your best setup?
He's been spoiled a little bit, as have many of the rest of us. I know I don't feel like I'm properly dressed unless I have my Blackmagic camera up. Let's start with Alex.
Very rarely. Like, I will admit that it's very rare for me to jump on a Zoom without it. And if I jump on a Zoom from my phone, you'll see that I'll almost never turn on the video. Like, it's just I don't want to think about it. I don't want to be frustrated by it. I don't want to be whatever. So I will admit that I usually use Zoom as an audio interface if I'm not here.
Guy?
Yeah, it depends on the meeting, but it is tough. Even at the office, I don't have quite this setup, and so I'd rather come in from home. But a couple times in after hours, I'll come in from my kitchen with the Facebook portal, and it's just an all-in-one device. It's the newer 15-inch. Mitch has given me some props on how good it can look, but also just using the phone. Sometimes I'll use my phone and pop into after hours if there's a communication that needs to be communicated. I mean, it's sure it doesn't look perfect, but if the message is sent and received, then I think you're fine.
Mitch Hill.
I've saved my 920 and internal microphone for people that I don't like. There it is. So if I don't like them, they're going to get the bad feed.
That's an interesting picture. Where did you come up with that from? Was it all of ABC's like best of or something?
No, it's oh, I'm showing the wrong picture. I'm so sorry. I'm showing absolutely the wrong thing. Let me go back to it. That's not what I wanted. Anyhow,
it's like the last supper with Jed and Granny. Yeah.
I didn't mean to do that. I was trying to show that. That's my 920.
No, that didn't work at all. That
didn't work at all. Yeah, it was so weird. So let's keep going.
Let's get, Harshid, let's make some sense out of all this, please, for us.
That one just threw me off. But so the microphone is usually a big thing that I've learned to just have around, even on my phone, sometimes just hooking it up to USB. I just find that gives it so much better quality. So a little bit of lighting has helped that I've learned over time, the few months that I've been here. So turning on just basic lights in my room and then making sure I zoom myself or frame myself to the camera, you could get quite a bit done. And I mean, this is a Brio webcam we're looking at me through, but there's definitely opportunities. Doesn't matter what entry level you're in, but if you have someone coming in on a phone call and then you have someone coming in with a microphone on a Zoom call, you're going to definitely hear the difference in audio and intelligibility. Excuse me. So I feel that microphone setups and all of this stuff that we kind of talk about is quite important, and perhaps on the road USB microphones are more important. And if I could hook up my interface, as I bought an SSL2 because the hurricane took out my lights and I couldn't join the pre-show part to get in, so I ran away from the plugging in the interface or mixer into the wall rather than plug in the USB bus, and you're good to go.
Fair enough. Next question.
Paul Wallace, sorry, Paul. I'm so used to saying it that way. From Austin, Texas, what case is recommended to best protect an iPad screen and back, especially the new 11th gen models, yet still produce good audio and video recordings?
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, I mean, on the far end, there's the Pelican case. There's actually a Pelican case for your iPad. So if you really want to protect it from everything, that's possible. From a production perspective, I don't know how it protects it as much, but the Small Rig, remember, makes a cage, much like the ones we've used for our phones. Small Rig has a tablet cage actually that you can put around it, and that's gonna give you lots of mounts if you're trying to do production. Again, if something hit the screen itself or the back, it might not work as well.
I don't know. I can't even remember the name, but I think there's two kinds of cases that I tend to use for iPads. One are the small ones that kind of flip over and just provide front screen protection. That's great if you're just putting your iPad in a suitcase or something like that and want to make sure the screen has a little extra. The one I use on my desk, and my iPad Pro comes in this monster. It is very heavy duty. It has a little stand on the back. It has the place that the pencil goes. And in this particular case, the reason that I like this is that I'm often using the iPad in the field for note taking or something else. And it's got one of those hand straps. And I find this incredibly useful if I need to take the pencil out, take notes on it, or if I'm using it as an extra monitor or a teleprompter or something like this. Having a really robust, really heavy rubber complete protection case so that, God forbid, you're out in a crowd, you get jostled and it falls down. You want the best chance of your device surviving. There are quite a few companies who make these, but the bigger, the better for me. Although I would hate this if I had to keep it on the case all the time and I was using this for something like teleprompting or something where the smaller cases do a better job. I'm happy with that big rubber bumper thing. Others might not be. Guy, your thoughts?
Yeah, the phone is such a much better image quality with the 11 and later that I don't know if I'd recommend using the iPad as much. I do have that cage that Alex recommended. It's the Axoon is the model, and it does have the quarter 20s as well as. Actually, I don't think it has.
And I think Small Rig makes them as well.
And an iPad one.
Yeah, they make an iPad one.
Oh, I haven't seen the small rig.
It has more quarter 20s, but it's less adjustable. I think it's going, yeah.
Yeah. The problem with this one, and I'll have to look at the small rig, is that once you put it in there, you can't use the keyboard any longer. And it takes a long time to take it back out. So if you're doing production and then you want to use the iPad for other things later, because I love using it with the keyboard, and it's a bummer to not have that extra port, because the keyboard gives you an extra USB-C port for power. So you can actually run power plus an accessory like a MixPre 3 or something.
Alex, you want to weigh in back again?
Yeah, and the other one to look at, of course, is the kind of the leader in a lot of these things are OtterBox. If you're just looking to protect it, so OtterBox makes the Defender series, I believe, and I don't know. I'm looking for it. I'm trying to see if they have it for the most recent one. I think it's, yeah, I'm not sure. But they do make them for iPads, and I'm just not sure if it's the most recent one, because right now it's listed as the 6th generation, 5th and 4th and 3rd. So take a look at that.
All right, we got a couple more questions before we turn on to our second hour question. So next one.
Douglas Carmichael is here. Mark Zuckerberg mentioned Meta grossly miscalculated the growth of online commerce and communication, and thus they overhired. Do you think this is an inertia on the consumer's part, or is this a limitation of current technology?
Alex?
I think that it's just hard to figure out exactly how your product is going to serve the market. And I think that Facebook, I believe, really overplayed the idea that people want to buy stuff inside of Facebook when most of us buy stuff inside of Amazon. So I think that's the idea of, I think that the linkages are really hard to figure out. So you think that you can overcome the linkage of the fact that, man, do you have to have a great product for me to buy something outside of Amazon or B&H or DV store? Those are like these big Sweetwater. Those are like the big four. That but if you're not, if you have an individual product, and then doing it inside of my social network was not, I know for me, was just not something I was interested in doing, and I'd get all these ads about you can buy something from your neighbor or whatever, and I didn't care, and so I think that it's a really, those are really difficult things to work through. So I think I don't think it's that the market wasn't there. I think that the linkage to the market was difficult. So I think that's the issue.
Yeah, there's been a lot of money invested in things that just have not gone as everybody expected.
Which just happens a lot. I mean,
yeah,
a lot of companies, Apple will just do it quietly, where they'll build an entire product, spend $100 million, $200 million, $1 billion on it, and then just turn it and just plow it into the ground without anyone ever seeing it. Facebook got to do it in front of everybody. It's not, I think that there's this idea that other companies don't just go down these horrible, not horrible, but just, like Google spent, billions on G Plus and everything and half of the other things that Google spent billions on, and then just close them down because that wasn't the thing that moved forward. So I don't think that there's any, I mean, they miscalculated and they're now making that correction. And I think that the other side of miscalculating and over hiring is miscalculating and under hiring and then missing a window. So I think that you're better off as a big company, especially a big publicly traded company, you're better off over estimating, hiring people and trying to take advantage of that market than you are saying, no, that's not going to be a big deal. Because Microsoft didn't think that the web was going to be a big deal, and that became a real problem. So those are the kind of things that it's much easier for a big company to just miss the boat. So throwing a whole bunch of people at the boat is usually a better solution. And even if it wasn't successful, I think it's still a better choice than the other direction.
Also shows that leadership is hard. You're getting to things that what I think everybody else is going to want is this. And it turns out they don't want that at all. And we've seen examples of that over and over throughout history. Let's move on to the next question.
From Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. Anyone watching the 96th annual Macy's Day Parade? Who has the best coverage, CBS, NBC, or David Brady on his cell phone? Best float award goes to... Yeah,
I think David shut down over there, so we missed the opportunity to see some of that. Mitch, you have thoughts?
I think the Stay Puffed Marshmallow Man was my favorite.
Float awards. Let's move on to the next question.
Next one in from David Paskin in Miami, Florida. What is the one piece of gear app that you are most thankful for?
Alex.
I mean, the one I use the most is the iPhone. Like we can talk about a lot of other things, but the thing that is that of the gear that I use that I have with me all the time is probably the iPhone.
Mitchell?
My Condor Blue HDMI adapter. Okay. It makes a wonderful sound, and it has a blue cable in it.
All right.
I'm going to say my laptop. I mean, I know it's just prosaic because we all have one, but this thing and its forebears really did change my life. And the fact that I can sit here in my desk and talk to all my friends every day, and so much of my business, so much of everything else has centered around that one piece of technology as my portal to personal satisfaction, business satisfaction, and a whole bunch of things. When I didn't have one back in 1984, I had a different life. And I think most of the technology advancement I've had has come through having a personal computer eventually migrated to a laptop that is my tool of choice every day. Harshid, and then Guy.
For Windows side, I got to thank my screen reader for giving me the opportunity to be on the panel and know what's going on. So I would say my screen reader, ZoomText Fusion, would be for magnification, screen reading capabilities. My phone is also another solid piece of equipment for anything mobile. If I want to look at what's the temperature or read a menu or something, I could open up an app like Google Lookout Assisted Vision. I could read the menu, read information, and go on my merry way.
I think a lot of us are appreciative for that technology because it allows you to be here and help us, and thankfully. So very cool. And Guy.
Yeah, I'd have to say it's that iPad Pro 12.9 inch, especially with the cellular in it. As much as I travel, it's been just a lifesaver. And every morning I use it notes just to do some work. And then we have something called NetSuite that we use to run our business. And then we use Zoom for phone. So it's like literally everything's right there on that thing. And then I can actually log into my cloud instances and I can control powerful PCs up in the cloud with it, which is crazy. So Microsoft Remote Desktop works very well on an iPad. And then there's Teradici as well that can control their computer. So it's a really slick setup with the 12.9 and the keyboard. The keyboard's clutch. I mean, I think the keyboard's better than the MacBook Pro keyboard. I have an older 16-inch i9, and I like the keyboard on the iPad Pro better. So it's a slick setup.
Cool. And I just noticed on the panel that we've got probably a post feed of some of David Brady's shots. So let's see if we can. Oh, there we go. So there you are.
That's the whole replay.
That's the whole replay. So you've rewound it. David's here with us.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. I missed the call to action to get on live, but this is my replay. I was streaming both to After Hours and my own Facebook page just for fun and family. So quick download, and here it is. This is pretty much the kickoff because there's Baby Yoda coming around the corner. So
awesome.
Sorry for it's all jittery, and that's just me being a goon. But
oh no, wait a second. I'm seeing two different feeds. The ones that we're sending out to the show looks like a more stable shot. It's got a crane in it, and then there's yours. I see with the white floating balloon on. It's not punched up.
Right. So if I photo,
there we go. That one. Yeah.
That's So, yeah.
From your perspective, how did this parade compare to the others that you've seen?
It was really quite secure. They closed my street, and there was a whole crew of production gear down at the end of the block. I noticed a big sky crane, like over the middle of Central Park West, with a big box lens camera up there. And you'll see it in some of the shots, I think. I pointed it out to Mitch. Attendance was really good. The weather was perfect. It was nice, low wind and nice bright blue skies. And Baby Yoda was flying with little complications.
There he is, right on our screens. Nice coverage. All right, I think we're going to let your feed run while we take care of this last one, and maybe through the discussion. We've got two more questions, and then our discussion of stuff.
Well, I'll sit back and enjoy it.
Yeah, and then pop in. If you see something show up on that feed that you want to explain, just pop in and do so. Let's hit to the next question.
From Stan, sorry, Yoda flying by is blowing my mind. From Stan Chan in San Francisco, California. How useful is your Scorpio, Alex? Would you have purchased it again today?
Alex?
Yeah, it's great. It's great. It's great on so many levels. It is a full-on mixer that is in a tiny little box. So there's tons of routing. There is, the ability to drop things into Dante. I use it for the Michael Krasny show, and it's super useful because I just throw those mics in. I've got great preamps. We send that actually upstairs to record it via Dante. And it's got, and every time I open it, I find more things that I didn't know how it did. So I don't, definitely don't regret having it. Like it's a really great machine.
All right. I think that was the last of the pre-questions for up. And now, even though we're 15 minutes past, we knew that today was going to be kind of a relaxed day. So the promise today was we were going to talk about why is it called that? What are the names of some things that commonly are used in production, or anything else you want to talk about? The industry is full of jargon. And I noted the list that was put on the why is it called that billboard today included things like scrim and grip, and there's just a whole bunch of Foley and things like that. So if you're interested in learning about a particular term, please put it in the Q&A system. If not, let me just start, since the first one that was listed up there is Scrim. This, to me, is an example of how things move in from other industries and become part of our discussion. And sometimes the meaning of them kind of alters depending on the part of the industry you're in. When I first heard the term scrim, it was in theater, and it was a drape in the theater that they would bring down that was usually a fabric, and it was transparent, and it would allow kind of a veiled look at the next part of the stage behind. So you'd have a tableau or something, and that's what I thought a scrim was. As I got into more lighting, I realized that they use scrims in lighting, and they mean something different, often a translucent, big white or netted thing that's going to diffuse and or drop down the intensity of light. And then I bought my first serious lighting kit, which was an Airy kit. That scrim was what they used for the metal round discs that you could put in. My first kit was 2 Airy 650s and 2 300s, and they had these little metal circles that had grids on them made of wire because the lights were hot. And so that became a scrim. And I guess the reason I'm saying this is because the language grows and it changes, and it's also regional. And so as you get into production sets and things like that, you'll start hearing this terminology, and you'll need to kind of figure out where it fits in your world. So that's it. Anybody else have any thoughts? Let's see. You want to go to the net first? Let's just go to the first question and see what people on the outside are interested in.
Sure. Mitch? Tommy Shantz has the first question here. St. Paul, Minnesota is where he is. How and why did you choose office hours as a name for this contraption?
Alex is the only one who can answer that.
Yeah, well, it wasn't supposed to last this long, and I didn't expect so much contribution, to be honest. So I think that one of the things that so where it really came from was that I had been working on virtual events for the last decade, and I really felt like they're the future. I strongly feel that physical events are exclusionary. They exclude 99.99999% of the world. I believe that the future is based on us getting past, being constrained by time and space and being constrained to those things. And so I just really felt like we need to move forward. And I've been trying to do that for 10 years. When COVID started, I saw both a problem to solve, which is that no one else is not many other people have done a couple thousand of events that are virtual, and they're going to have the same problems I had for the first couple hundred. And then that's going to make my idea look bad. Like that was it. Like literally, I just was worried that people are going to screw this opportunity up. And the second thing I saw was there was an opportunity to really, how do we build a big community around the world? How do I, and I was, and figure out how to do this together. I did think that it was going to lean much more on my shoulders just to answer everybody's questions so that I could keep them moving forward and make sure that they were successful. And I had not done that with Hangouts. I had held all the information in. I didn't want anyone to compete with me. So I wouldn't tell anybody how to do anything because I had to make payroll, and so as a payroll is a big fixing factor where you just go, I'm not going to tell anyone anything because I have to pay for it. I didn't have to do that this time. And the other opportunity I had was that I didn't have any, I knew where I'd be because of COVID. I knew that I wouldn't be traveling. I wouldn't be on the road. I wouldn't have to try to figure this out, and I could just do it at home. I figured it would last 3 to 6 months, which is why I did it every day. I was like, but there's not much time. I got to align everything and get everybody like on the right path so they can be successful with online events. And anyway, so that's where I just figured I'm opening up office hours. I'm just going to answer all your questions to make sure that people are successful. And again, what I underestimated was the value of, or the number of people and who the people were going to be and the quality of the people that would show up. I vastly underestimated. And so it's been a much bigger thing. I probably wouldn't name it office hours again, because it's just a very common name, because I just did it as a kind of a, literally, I didn't know if I would do it more than a week. Like I was like, if nobody shows up, I'm not going to do this again. And people just kept showing up every day for 900 sometimes. We're all here together. So anyway, so that's the name was not thought of and not expected to go as far as it has. So that's the answer to that question.
Cool. So there you go. The definitive answer from the person who named it. Let's move on to the next question.
From Simon Ray in Shrewsbury, UK. I've always wondered where the name Gobo came from when it comes to masking lights to project shapes and patterns.
So when I was starting, the term of art was mostly cookie. And that comes from a longer term called cucoloris. And they were usually wooden panels that somebody had cut out a pattern on to break up a light and make it look a little more interesting. I didn't hear Gobo for some years, and I heard it when some instruments came out from companies like Source 4 and others that had the ability to take that round glass or metal shape that you can put in a hard edge projector like a LECO ellipsoidal light and rotate it. And so I always thought in the back of my mind that the Gobo was something to do with the movement of it. Now, I could be entirely wrong. And the reason I'm even saying this is because this is typically, I think, my career in learning jargon has been a whole history of this. You hear something used on set and you go, why is it called that? You just know it is. You maybe have time to do a little bit of asking somebody, why is it called that? And they'll often look to you and say, I don't know, we just call it that. Beyond that, I have no idea why Gobo became a synonymous term for the small shaped patterns that go in a light. Alex, you had something to know?
Yeah, I think it actually stands for go between optics. So it goes between the things that are there. So it's it is a go between from the light to where it's going through. But I think Gobo, it's go between optics is what it originally stood for.
There you go. That's very cool. I see. I learned something too today. Let's continue and see if we can learn some more. Next question.
Excuse me. Paul Wallace asks from Austin, Texas, what is the meaning of gaff tape?
So if you need to know what gaffer's tape is, you need to know what a gaffer was. And I've read up on a couple of different terms. The one that I enjoy the most, but I'm not sure is the correct one, is that the hook that some lighting technicians use to adjust lights in the early days looked very much like a gaff that you would find on a boat to like pull large fish on it. That's kind of romantic and nice. There's also some terms, the gaffer, who is an official position on a crew, the head of the lighting department. That came from a British expression, and the gaffer was like the boss or something like that. Now, those are the two that I've heard. Again, I'm not sure which of those is more correct, and somebody may have heard something different, and somebody on the panel may have said something, but those are the two that I remember. And then gaff tape, obviously, is a specialist tape that a lighting professional will use because it is one of the most universally useful things you can have on a set. Mitch, you had some thoughts?
Yeah, you can gaff a job, and that means that's the gaffer gaffing a job, and working with the gaffer could be the best boy.
Well, yeah, those are actual Hollywood positions, and they are on the call sheets. And so a gaffer, the best boy is their first assistant. They're in the electrical department. They also, they're very strict divisions as to who can do what on a union set. So, that is, if you're on a big production in Hollywood, departments are very careful about, you don't touch things that are the province of another department. So if you're on the electrical crew and somebody says you need to move some of the camera equipment that is in the grip department, you actually can't. It's not just you shouldn't, but you can't do it. There will be, some shop steward will pull you aside and go, you're not supposed to touch that. That's not in your area. And that's only available for the people who are qualified to do that. A movie set, any kind of a big production set, is not a place where you should grab, touch, or move things if you don't know what you're doing. There's safety issues involved, and a lot of other things. And just the hierarchy of sets are very structured because people who do things are qualified to do things, and the union regulations require that. Mitch, you had some more thoughts?
Yeah, adding on to that, when I worked at WFIL in Philadelphia as a boss jock, I used to go down to the TV studio for WPVI, which is our sister station. And WPVI's the action news set was a great place to go. One time I noticed that there's one person to move the camera, another person to operate the camera. I don't know if that's
absolutely
changed.
Look, and that happened. My wife worked in TV, and at one point she came out of the newspaper business. And when she was a young copy editor in the newspaper, she was desperate to get her copy. And they used to print them off the computer on somebody's desk, and it would come on a printer like 2 floors away. So she went down and she realized that's the copy for my next thing. And there was a pair of scissors hanging on a chain above the copy. And she actually thought, okay, well, I'm down on deadline. I have to get this done. And she cut the the printer copy off and then ran away. She got called into the office and said, you can't do that. That is a different task for union designation, and you are not allowed to touch the scissors and cut the copy. And in structured systems, these kind of, we laugh about them and that should be silly. Why not? But there's a long history of why departments have fought for their benefits and their particular things. And the rigid structure of sets can be something you really do have to pay attention to if you want to be welcomed in and not make mistakes. Mitch, you had thoughts?
Yeah, it's part of the chain of command that's so very important in the Hollywood system. And what your wife got was what's called a grievance.
Yeah. And, I think it's part of the training, right? They were saying to her as a young woman who was first time in a official large newspaper newsroom, there's a way we do things here. And you can't just make unilateral decisions and do it. Nobody really thought she damaged the world by cutting off a piece of paper from a wire machine, but she had to be brought into the system and understand where these boundaries live. Sometimes you get that little, hey, I've had it happen to me, hey, don't do that. Here's why. And now you know better for next time. Next question.
From Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas again. What is the origin of the word podcast?
Alex.
Well, the person that takes the credit for it, I don't know if it's really his, is Adam Curry, of course. And he just put a name on it. A lot of us were talking about them being internet shows, RSS audio feeds. No one really had, and this is really why it's important. People will say, well, we want to be more accurate, like we talk about the Belfast method, and someone will want to have something that's more accurate, but more accurate doesn't necessarily mean that it has a ring to it, and the ring oftentimes makes it easier for it to grow. And so I think that Adam Curry was looking for a name that he could throw on it that, because the primary person that could listen to podcasts, because what happened was it was an RSS feed that it would download, and you could have it downloaded directly, and then feed it into your iPod. And so that's why it was like it could be sent to your iPod, and the primary person that could listen to it easily, you could listen to it in other ways, but really the market was for an iPod. And so that's why they threw it into, and Leo tried to fight it by calling it netcasts, but it never really took off. Just didn't have the same ring to it. So I think it's a great lesson in naming, is that you got to have something that rolls off the tongue that people may not know, but it just has the right consonants and vowels and stuff like that. It really isn't. It's not oftentimes it being accurate. It's just it being easy to say and it being the right thing to say. And a lot of people called it a lot of different things for a little while, and that's the one that won.
There you go. Interesting. Next question.
And it's from Chris Clark in Tempe, Arizona. Please talk about the rich trove of metaphors that populate this field. For example, streaming, workflow, mixer.
Mitch, take us away.
I want to just stop and just say, these aren't just limited to the United States, USA. It's there's a lot of different terminology that extends beyond around the world. For example, in England, the person that we refer to as the TD, or mixer maybe, is the vision mixer. For example, if you are a on-air talent and you're a DJ, for example, on the radio, in England, that person would be a presenter. Actually, a better term. I like it much better than DJ, disc jockey. So there's a huge number of different phrases, and they all have their genesis probably on the technological invention of that particular device or thing that makes it possible.
Absolutely. In fact, I remember the first time I said DP to somebody who was from the English system, and they said, no, that's a lighting cameraman. And they're just across the pond and in different cultures, lots of different things. Alex?
Yeah, it's interesting how you get into this back and forth. Like, for instance, for us, a technical director, a lot in a pure video form, in broadcast, a technical director is someone who's pushing the buttons on the switcher, and they're cutting it. Again, as Mitch said, in Europe, it's a vision mixer, which I think makes way more sense than technical director, and it's especially compounded by the fact that a technical director in events is not someone pushing the buttons. It's someone managing all the technical aspects of the event. So they're dealing with the power, they're dealing with the AV flow, they're dealing. So so the problem is a technical director can mean a lot of different things as you start to work through that. And so even things like one of the things that Chris asked about streaming means a lot of different things. It can be HLS is technically not streaming, even though that's how you're watching this stream is HLS. So we're streaming it to you through YouTube, but we're streaming RTMP to YouTube, but it's being handed to you in small little packets of it's like it's not streaming to your computer. It's saving a bunch of video files to your computer and over and over and over again and giving them a time of life. So they only stay there for when you need them, and then they get thrown away, or it keeps them in the server and then you can rewind. But they're not really streaming as much as they are sending you lots of files. So a lot of those things can be difficult to kind of figure out there.
Nice. Next question.
And it's from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas, asking, what is the origin of the word microphone?
Mitch, you want to take a shot at it?
That's a pretty easy one. I mean, I didn't know going into this, but micro and phone. I mean, Alexander Graham Bell, I guess, is one of the first people to invent the phone or the telephone. And they're both, versions of the same thing. So micro means maybe a small telephone. Paul, you should have asked your buddy Alexander what he meant by that.
Well, yeah, that makes sense to me, a small version of something that transduces sound, because we have megaphones, which are not electronic, and then we have, something smaller that transduces sound. One of the most interesting things I looked up once upon a time, somebody asked me why lavaliers are called lavaliers, and there's actually an ancient story behind it, that apparently, from what I don't know, it was Wikipedia or some encyclopedia said that the French king Louis, one of the Louis, gave his mistress, Madame Lavalier, a big jewel that hung around her neck. And then when they were trying to figure out in the early days of broadcast what to call those lavaliers that were huge things like that hung on, like Dave Garroway on the Today Show, somebody came up, well, let's call it a lavalier for Madame Lavalier. So you can see that people keep trying to figure out what is a historic reference, is there something in another industry that we can adapt to our industry and bring the name along with it. There's just a rich, complex history of what things are named, which is kind of why the subject has always fascinated me. Let's move on to the next question.
David Paskin, Miami, Florida, asks, why is a key, a chroma, luma, called a key?
Mitchell.
I'm going to take a shot at this one. I think it has to do with the key color involved in making that chroma or luma key, red, green, or blue. So I would say that my best guess would be a key is something that's specifically attached to the green, for example, because it's a key that inserts in the lock and unlocks the actual effect.
That's interesting because, and the only thing that sets off in my mind is that there is such a thing as a key grip, and that indicates the chief grip in charge of something. So key is also a word that is used to denote a primary participant. And so you wonder if the fact that a chroma key deals with one of the primary colors, there might be some linkage there. Like a lot of these things, I'm just trying to think my way through why did it happen. It did happen that way, and it's universal in the language, but I know nothing beyond that, just speculation. Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas asks, the trademark of Apple, Apple IIe, Apple IIc, Lisa, Mac, Apple II, Profile, HD, Mouse, iPad, iPhone, AppleWorks, floppy drive, what are they?
Well, you'd have to ask somebody who was around in the origin of Apple. I do know that there's famously, they wanted a simple name. And I think this was a conversation that I've read about. I don't remember all the details of it, but really, literally, it was Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak kind of figuring out with a couple of their friends in those early days. I don't remember who they were, but they settled on Apple as something that there's a story behind it. I just don't remember too much about it. Mitch, do you remember anything else about it?
I remember Lisa was Steve Jobs' girlfriend. Or
well,
his daughter.
Yeah, daughter. Daughter.
Yeah, daughter.
Yeah, I think that's his daughter. Once they got the Apple name and the Apple won and became that West Coast Computer Fair kind of hit, and then eventually moved into the original Apple IIs, and they started to take off. I remember that first logo was kind of a Sir Isaac Newton reference too. They had a complex logo of a figure, kind of like the Vitruvian Man kind of figure under a tree. And I think there was something to do with that Isaac Newton kind of reference as well. But that's dim in my mind. So let's go on to the next one.
From Brody Hefner in New York City. In audio, what is a Shepard tone?
And that one I have never heard of. Has anybody heard of Shepard Tone?
Yeah, I would probably ask that one during the audio. It's an audio tone, but I don't think we're the right ones to answer that question.
Yeah, that's interesting. Let's move on to the next one.
From Greg Gibson in Washington, D.C. After this episode, I'll be ready for a game of broadcast Trivial Pursuit. Who's in?
Yeah, exactly. This is a jargon-filled industry, and as I say, it kind of moves and morphs. I've been surprised. I was, in fact, when I was looking up a few things for this, I thought, I wonder where the term stinger came from, and I always thought it was just an extension cord. And it turns out that in looking at it, there was actually a slightly more in-depth reason they call them stingers, and that's that on some sets, the electrical department, in getting ready for a move of the people in, would leave one hot plugged in extension cord, and that was the stinger. So when somebody showed up on set with a cart or something like that, there was always one hot line. So it wasn't every extension cord, it was a specific to do a function extension cord. And so even now, many decades after I've been in that, I keep refining my understanding of how some of these terms came out. Mitch, your thoughts?
My favorite one is, what's a C47?
Yeah, and we've talked about that on the show before. For those of you who do not hang out around sets, that is the name for a common wooden clothespin. And I have heard multiple stories, and I think Alex's origin story that he expressed once was different than mine. I had heard that there was a catalog where a lot of the grips and gaffers and people who need those on lighting, because a clothespin is very useful, particularly if you've got a hot light and it's got barn doors. A clothespin is the perfect device for attaching a piece of gel to the front of a barn door or something like that. And I had heard it was the ordering number from the catalog, C47. I'll give you a bag of item C47. Again, that's what I heard. That doesn't mean that is necessarily true. And there could be other origin stories for that are totally different. And that's, a lot of these things we just don't know. They've been subsumed by time. My favorite out of that is actually MOS. There's a term in video, mit out sound. And literally, I was told there was a German director once in one of the early days of Hollywood who went, I want this shot mit out sound. And he wrote down MOS, and that stuck forever. Is that the actual story? Who knows? But it's certainly a charming tale. Let's move on to the next one.
Next question in from James Babbitt in San Diego. Why is the grip called a grip?
That's a good question. Anybody want to take a shot at that? Why is a grip called a grip? So a grip Mitchell's going to take a shot at it.
That's all right. And you're welcome to it too, Bill. It just makes sense that a grip is a person that moves stuff. If they're moving it, they're likely holding a grip of some kind to move it around. So the term is grip that light fixture or whatever, or grip that case or that Pelican case. I think it has a lot to do with the ability to move whatever it is that they're moving around the set.
Yeah, and on a set, grip gear, which is a huge category, is all the mechanical things for holding, positioning, elevating lights. So it is part of the lighting department. It's gone beyond that. So now you get a grip truck. And one of the primary things that a grip truck, if you hire one to be on your location, will have are all these devices, C-stands, grip arms, grip heads. These are all things that are common in the industry. But it's also got into a lot of other specialist stuff. So it's possible to have lighting instruments and fixtures and things like that on a grip truck. You will find apple boxes and wooden things made. It's anything having to do with solving problems on the set as to the execution of a lighting plot or even a sound plot in some cases. You will find some sound stuff like blankets and things like that the sound department will use to muffle things on a grip truck. And I don't know if there's anything more than the fact that these were the people who, had these devices that hold things, and eventually that got turned into grip. I've never heard anything more definitive than that. That's my education in it was. Let's go on to the next question.
From Kenneth Jones in Seattle, Washington, asking, power bus, ground bus, signal bus, Q bus, greyhound bus, how is it that they all share this name?
Mitchell, you want to take a shot at this?
Well, they don't all mean the same thing. Obviously, a bus is a vehicle that travels with lots of people in it. But I think it has to do with a lot of electrical terminology. When you have a bus in an electrical cabinet, it's the main connector. It's usually a big solid piece of brass or a metal. And it's sort of kind of made its way into the audio side of the business as that bus being the main connection, is the main stereo or the main bus that's being connected. That seems to make sense to me.
Yeah, I always heard it kind of like that. It's the interface between two circuits. And I think even in semiconductor design, when you've got two circuit paths and they're getting toward each other and they have to interact with each other, that separation or not separation in between them is generally called a bus. Things come in this bus and they're going to be switched to or otherwise routed to a different bus or a different set of circuits and things like that. That moment in the middle, I think, is often what they refer to as a bus, but it's across a lot of industries as well.
Yeah, I've heard that term with mixing. It busts that over to the stereo mix or whatever.
Yeah, there's an 8-bus mixer or a 4-bus mixer, and that means how many pathways do you have out of this, or that you can connect to other things. Common term, but I've also heard it in the computer industry. Here's the power bus circuits, and they're all in this area to do this job, and next to it is data path circuits, and they may be running to a different bus. So it's a pretty universal term, the way I've heard it. Let's move on to the next one.
Douglas Carmichael's here with a question. In the Meta layoff email, Mark Zuckerberg said the layoff employees would receive their November RSU vesting. What is an RSU?
I don't know that. Anybody else have any experience with that? Alex?
It's a restricted stock. Just means they're going to get their stock that they were due. That's all it means.
Okay, so it was a classification of stock awards that was restricted to employees or something like that. That makes sense. Next.
Paul Wallace from Austin, Texas asked, who named Byte magazine?
Bits and Bytes. That's a clever name. In digital math, bits are the lowest common denominator. 8 bits is a byte. And megabyte comes from that. I think that is just a technical term for those packet sizes in digital electronics. Unless anybody else has any additions over that, that's the way I always understood. Oh, okay, we'll move on.
Jonas Dattel from Stuttgart, Germany asked, so where does the name gallery come from, and who even knows what it means?
I guess he's talking about like the Zoom gallery. Alex?
Yeah, I think that I think the origin of it was actually a balcony. So it was a place that you could sit over top and see everything. So I think that is and I think that obviously, so I think I think that's like Middle English or something, but the gallery is where you'd stand up above, and so you see a lot of different things. And I think also, of course, we have art galleries where you see a lot of different images. So I think that's kind of how people thought through it.
That makes perfect sense to me. Next question.
Craig McFarlane from Boston, Massachusetts. When crossing different industries, have you noticed how the abbreviation ISO refers to very different things?
Yeah, Alex?
Yeah, it does get confusing. so ISO can be, a term of structure, but it can also be us grabbing individual channels. So when we say ISO, if you talk to an engineer sometimes that comes from a different industry, they're very confused by why you're saying, I need 8 ISOs. They're like, okay, what does that mean? So that it definitely does have a couple different meanings depending on where you're. One of the big ones that we argue about a lot, by the way, and this is only tangential to this, is IEC versus, so when people say I want an IEC cable, a lot of them, what they mean is they want the 3-pronged cable that you see often for computer equipment that you put into the back, and they'll call that an IEC cable. That is not an IEC cable. It's a C13, and the thing that it goes into is a C14. These are IEC cables, and that is an IEC standard, but they are only the one that I believe that you. There's C15s and C12s and there's lots of different ways that these things plug in, and you want to know what they are, because when you're asking for something when you're looking for it, you got to be pretty specific. But it's not an IEC cable; it's a C13.
Yeah, I've run across that too. I always thought ISO was just a shortened form of isolated or isolation, and it's generic, and you can use it for different things in different parts of the industry, and they do. So interesting. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asked, in French, the hi-hat cymbal is called the charleston. Where would that have come from?
I wonder if it's from the dance and the style of music that came out of the 1920s. Maybe not. I have no more information than that bit of speculation. So unless somebody's a music major or knows something about drums, we're not going to get that one answered any more closely than that. Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. Macintosh?
Mitchell?
Come on, Paul. It's an apple. That's exactly why they called it that. It's a variation.
Yeah, I think that's it. They wanted to separate that product line from the Apple IIe. Let's move on to the next question.
Douglas Carmichael asking, we put jam on our toast, but where did the jam brand for jingles come from?
I'm not sure I understand what the jam brand for jingles. Was that a company? Mitch, your thoughts?
Yeah, a jam in a band is when you get the group together and they play together. But in this particular instance where it refers to a jingle company called Jam, it has two meanings. One is the one I just mentioned. The other is that the owner's initials are John A. Forget his last name. But anyhow,
something with an M, obviously.
It's somebody with an M. It's like Pam's was the same way. It was a
there you
nickname
go.
for somebody.
Okay. Yeah, often owners or people who start companies have a little secondary thing in there. I called it this because that was my nephew and I really like my nephew or something. There's a lot of possibilities there. Next question.
From Brandon Buttram in Indianapolis, Indiana, asking Alex, I heard you use a term when calling the show on one of stage concerts you were experimenting with. What is the origin of woof? And how do you measure it?
Alex.
I don't know. I don't know where the origin is. It is maybe it's that you'd have a big dog that would just say that would woof like you've gone as far as you need to go before I tack. Like so that like that's so the only guess I can make is that that's somehow connected is
that would be an awesome origin. Awesome origin.
Stop. So in when we term it in film or in video, woof means stop. So you'll go, hey, go a little further, go, woof. And woof just means that like that's where it is easy to understand. And this is where some of this happens. It's easy to understand over comms. It's easy to understand yelled out. It's easy to, so a lot of these things have to have the way that you use consonants and verb, consonants and vowels. It's easy to get to. It's not confused with a lot of other things. And that's how a lot of this stuff starts to survive. You could say, stop right there, but that could be caught up in a bunch of other things. And so people like to shorten those into something that are easy to say that isn't going to be confused with another term that's easy to say that we use somewhere else. And so woof became that thing. But woof just means, yeah, you've gone far enough. So, and usually it's done when you're telling them to do something like, turn it up, woof. And that just means you're at you're where you want to be.
Mitchell?
I heard it for the first time in the late 80s when I was in an edit suite doing something for a client, and they went woof. And I went, what? And he said, woof. And I said, what? Huh? Woof.
We also say it when someone's telling a joke in front of a client that is inappropriate. You'll hear one of us in the back like, woof. Like, and that is a whole nother meaning, and that is stop talking. Like whatever you're doing, like if you're ever on me and you're talking to someone and I go woof, like, and it will feel random. It means that you're either saying something you shouldn't say, you're telling a joke you shouldn't tell, you're giving information away that you shouldn't give away, and mostly it is shut your mouth. So if someone says wolf while you're talking, that means like that definitely means to stop. Same thing, the adjustment that you're making right now, stop. Like right there. So that's the other meaning.
And people do make up their own for these kind of things. I had a client once, and if we were in edit and I got things exactly right, she'd say, boom. That meant stop. Just stop. That's perfect. That's what I was looking for. And so over and over again, boom, boom. Okay.
Well, you can tell people who aren't in the ecosystem because they have different words. And so if they're in the general ecosystem, they all kind of develop the same language. And if they're not, they develop their own language. And they're all accurate, but that's also like events and broadcast have separated. So they have a whole bunch of different ways of doing things because they come from, they hang out with each other in a different way.
Cut. Another big one. Cut.
Yeah, cut. Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. Who named RSS?
It's an initialism for real simple syndication, but I don't know who it was that named it. Alex?
Yeah, no, I think that, and what's interesting about acronyms like that is that people go backwards on the acronym. Like they'll sit there and look at the acronym and try to describe it, and they have to think about the smart people, the ones that make up names that we use over and over again, are generally people who think about how is it going to land? Like how is it going to be easy to say? Is it going to be easy to remember? A lot of like when you look at government or military things, they try to describe it and they come up with a bunch of words, but it has to end up as laser, or it has to end up as, whatever it is that says something and feels like what they're doing. Or they'll just keep coming up with synonyms until they get to what they want. So it's not like it just accidentally shows up that way. And if it is something that you can't read, it means that someone didn't do their job because you just can't remember it,
Next question going to take us back into office hours history. Mitch, take it away.
Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. Can we go through the latest office hour dollar valuations and what are you allowed to spend before January 1st on your gear?
Guy, once upon a time, had a whole list of these office hours functional dollar equivalents. I don't know if he still does. Alex, we'll start with you.
There we go. No, there it is.
There it is. Okay.
It needs to be updated. I just pulled it up, but Dogecoin isn't at that price, and I don't know if we're calling a Colin or a Roscoe or what we're calling these. And I think there's a Dougie now that's like a 250 grand. I think Adam Mitchells can correct me in the chat as to what this should be, but this is what we had at.
So if you were here in the beginnings of office hours, you were quite familiar with this as we talked about.
The $7 one was a Fenwick, or maybe it was a $15 was a Fenwick.
Yeah, there was something that was a Fenwick at some point.
And then mine is because that was the cost of Photoshop before they started renting it to us. And Mickey is because it's a U87 and Charles is because that's the monitor that he has.
Yeah, right. his color accurate, perfectly balanced monitor. Mitchell?
Yeah, and I made the list 1,500 for my famous mute switch.
There you go.
Oh, there you go. All right. Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. Pixel cores?
And
that must be an Alex question because you were there.
Yeah, it was coined by actually John Foster, who passed away. But John, we were talking about it, and it's we were talking about trying to name it. And we were trying to figure out what we're going to call it. It was 3 people or 4 people. It was, there were 4 of us that were like hanging out, and we were trying to figure out what it was going to sound like. We were going to start, and it was 25 at that point. Like we had a couple people join, and we were trying to figure out what it was called. And it said, well, it's kind of like Pixel, but it's a lot like the Marine Corps, like the way I was running it at the time. And so it was very like a core, like there was a lot of structure and a lot of like, this is what we're going to do. And very direct. And then, but then it was also dealing with pixels because we were doing computer graphics mostly, not video. And so he's like, it's like a pixel core. And I was like, oh, I'm going to register that right now. So it was literally a conversation that lasted about 20 minutes. And that was the name. It wasn't a lot of reasoning. I just loved the name as it rolled off of his tongue. I was like, oh, that's the name. So,
perfect. There you go. I think it was a really good name. It really described things succinctly and beautifully. Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. What was the first ever tech word?
Oh boy. Fire. Mitch, you want to weigh in on it?
That's what I was going to say. That was that's it.
Fredo, you want to get in on this?
My guess would be calendar.
What was Neanderthal for lunch break? Let's move on.
Prefabulated amulet.
There you go. Next question.
From Douglas Carmichael, we talk about the FS-HDR. That makes the panelists look good, but what does FS mean?
Mitch?
Full scale.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, so that's often a engineering term for loudless units, full scale, and things like that. So full scale has a specific technical meaning, but it may be adapted to something else. Let's go to the next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. Ethernet. Who named it?
Someone whose grandmother was named Ethel, maybe. No, I don't. That's absolutely wrong, and I have no clue. And I'm just making things up at this point. Anybody? Mitch, do you know?
I think it's part of the Xerox Park Labs project. That Xerox had Ethernet first.
Ah, okay. Well, ether, plasma, ether, up in the ether, there's probably somebody who felt that there was a really low resistance somewhere and that maybe that was a good thing. Again, purely guessing. We have another question in here. We're almost finished with today, so take it away.
Douglas Carmichael asking, why is the iconic Dorrough meter called a Dorrough?
That I think we can probably have an answer to because that is a specific thing.
I'm pointing at
Go ahead,
one.
Mitch.
Yes, Mike Dorrough invented the Dorrough meter, and that's why it's called a Dorrough.
Hey,
so beautiful.
It is a beautiful meter. It is lovely. That's right. For those of you who don't know it, if you're on video and not just listening to the show, Mitchell has a set of Dorrough meters on over his left-hand shoulder. They are the huge arcing lit up lights that give you a really, really beautiful look at what your audio levels are, even from across the room. A lot of big studios, fancy studios had those to make sure
they make a stage version of that, Bill. It's gigantic. It's about yay big that you can put up on a stage and see the levels very well.
The Dorrough meters are not inexpensive themselves because they're a highly accurate test thing. I wonder what the big one costs. Maybe the ballistic stuff is all the same, so it's just bigger LEDs or something. Anyway, that's the end of the questions we have for today. So we're right there on time. Thank you all. I wish I knew, and I don't know if John Preto has any intelligence on this. I wish I knew how many people had been involved and stopped by this show over the course of the 2 years that we've been running. Almost, we're very close to the 1,000th show, but there has been a lot of people. And I just wanted to say, kind of as my little closing thing, the biggest privilege of being here is to be able to interact with, chat with, and show up with so many people over the course of the years. I'm really looking forward to this anniversary show to see some of the people that I've gotten to hang out with and to make friends with over the course of the last 2 years. It's been an extraordinary thing. So if I'm not thankful for anything else on Thanksgiving, it's for the opportunity that Alex has afforded us all by creating this to meet, interact with, talk to, learn from. Oh my gosh, learn from so many people, including the people on the panel here today. This is a good example of the people who show up every day and help us get smarter, help us expand our knowledge. It's an amazing thing. Also, to all of you who are listening today, thank you, because that's why we do this. And without you adding your questions and doing the rest of that, we are not able to do this show. So you are an integral part of it. To the many people in the back end, and I'm always, my heart is warmed by looking over to a column where I get to see some of the people who are working in the back end here, and I see names of people who have also become friends. They are often silent. They sit in the back and they do things that are required to bring this show to you every day. And the only way you know who they are is to watch the credits that are going to roll here in just a second. So I would highly suggest you spend a little time at the end of every day and get to know some of those people, what they're doing. They're making this possible. Also, there are people, there are a lot of them are on there, but there's a coterie of people who have helped us over the years who are no longer kind of actively involved in the show. And each one of them put a brick in the wall that made this thing possible. So thank you to everybody historically who's done that. That's enough babbling. We're at 1 minute after 9, so we're going to say goodbye. Thank you for listening. See you next week. I will, and I'll see you tomorrow on the show. Happy Turkey Day, Americans. We got a woof. We just have left. I'm still confused by that picture. Of Thanksgiving.